Today's episode of the WAC podcast is brought to you by Hercules Tires, the official tire of the Western Athletic Conference. Now here are your hosts, Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil.
Welcome into the WAC podcast. Eric Danner and Rachel Vigil coming at you on this Thursday morning. Actually, it's not even afternoon, with some very surprising news that we found out yesterday. Commissioner Jeff Hurd for the Western Athletic Conference is stepping down.
He is. We just had him on the show last week. He had an opportunity to give us the scoop, but obviously wanted to tell people in his own way. Told the WAC staff yesterday, and it's on our website, social media, that he is stepping down effective January 1. And what a ride it's been for Jeff. I'm sure we'll have him on before January 1 again, but he's been with the WAC for 37 years, including the last 10 years as commissioner, and nobody's seen the peaks and valleys in this conference more than Jeff. So we wish him well. Yeah. Obviously, he's not going anywhere just yet, but he will be in the not too distant future, and 50 years in college athletics too. So he's really devoted a big chunk of his life to this profession.
That's crazy to think about. And yeah, we obviously will wish him the best. He's not gone yet. We still have a lot more time, and we'll definitely have him on the podcast, but maybe he can get some vacations planned after January 1.
I might plan a few before January 1 if I was Jeff. But
right? Yeah, no kidding. Got those plane tickets, get ready to go. So hopefully, but yeah, of course, we wish him the best of luck in whatever his next future holds. But let's talk about new schools are finally official here. Football is back in the WAC. We've been talking about it seems like all summer, but it's now official.
And July 1 was the official date, and we put out all the social media postings, including one with Jeff putting up the new logos here in the WAC office. And we're very excited to have our new members, Abilene Christian, Lamar University, Sam Houston State, and Stephen F. Austin State University. And they bring a lot to the table, Rachel, and all of a sudden, guess what? The WAC has more Texas schools in Texas than any Division I conference in the country, more than the Big 12, more than the Southland. So 6 in Texas. Starting next year, Rachel, we have 3 in Utah. Southern Utah will be coming into the WAC. So 9 schools within the states of Utah and Texas, and those are the 2 fastest growing states in the nation. And then, you look at where else, Phoenix, Arizona, obviously a place with a lot of growth, New Mexico, California, Washington. So we're in some pretty good spots there.
You want to travel? Come to the WAC. That's all I got to say.
That's right.
Lots of traveling going on. And then we're going to have Marlon Edge on the podcast in a little bit. But one of the big storylines throughout the NCAA and practically the world right now is this name, image, likeness going on with NCAA athletes now, how they can make money based off of their likeness.
We talked about this last week on the show, and we weren't quite sure when this would take effect, if it would take effect, how it would look, and what we'll have a very insightful conversation with Marlon Edge in our final segment today. But it was right out of the box, Rachel. 1201, we started seeing student athletes endorsing products. I mean, and you talk about trying to wrap your mind around that after what the rules have been for the last 100 years in the NCAA. It was pretty interesting, and it wasn't just Power 5 football players, women's basketball, different divisions. So, student athletes now have an opportunity to make some money off of their name, image, and likeness.
And I know that was like one of the major topic or like talking points about this is that the football players, the men's basketball players are really going to benefit, but for it to be right out of the gate, be women's basketball players who signed the first deal. We've been seeing just a lot of athletes overall, not just those main sports, but swimming and diving as well. I've seen a couple of them sign. So it's cool to see that for them, but now there's a lot of gray area, it feels like, and we'll talk about that when we have Marlon on the podcast in a little bit.
Yes, so many questions. And we even had more questions, but it's there's really no answers to them just yet. And each state's going to have different laws and what's going to be allowed or not allowed. And but I mean, we've heard this argument for years and years that schools have been benefiting from their student athletes. Obviously, they get scholarships and other incentives, but now that they are able to put a little money in their pocket. Having been college students ourselves before, that's a big deal when you have, if you don't have money to go out to eat or whatever.
Time to get a job either.
Right. Because
being a student athlete is a full-time job pretty much.
It is.
It'll be interesting to see how this plays out in the next coming years, but let's also talk about the MLB Draft coming to Denver this Sunday. That's crazy to think about.
It is July 11th. Now the MLB Draft used to be at the beginning of June, got moved this year to July. Of course, last year there was only 5 rounds. Nick Gonzalez, who we had talked to several times, wound up going in the top 10. This year, another, now that Sam Houston State's in the WAC, we have another likely top 10 pick, Colton Couser from Sam Houston State, projected to go in the top 10. And I'm not sure exactly how the drafts, like the NFL draft or the NBA draft, where they have players on site. Nick, of course, was during the pandemic, so they did everything remotely. So I don't know if Colton is going to be in Denver potentially. And he's one of the highest rated college draft eligible players, because baseball is different where you can get drafted right out of high school. And if you do make that commitment to go to college, then you have to wait till after your third year of college before you can be drafted again. And that's where Colton falls into. But a lot of the higher picks are expected to be right out of high school. So it'll be interesting to see. And with 20 rounds, I imagine, on average, we usually get, 5 or 10 WAC players selected during the draft. And minor league baseball is different this year too. Normally these draft picks would go right to the rookie leagues, which would be in places like Grand Junction and Billings and those places. They had to start, they always start in April. So the rookie leagues are now going to be in Phoenix, I believe, and some of the spring training facilities. So it'll look different, but an exciting time with the Major League Baseball draft coming up this week.
And you may know the answer to this. I do not, but are they doing the same amount of rounds that they typically do? Because I know last year it was shorter.
Right. It used to be 40 rounds. And last year they only did 5. This year's 20. So not as many. So I think that was something Major League Baseball was looking to do, because minor league baseball had become so expansive that to kind of cut down on a little bit. So to the 20 rounds, still a lot better chance of getting drafted in the major leagues than you do in the NBA. If we segue into our next topic here, Fardaws Aimaq.
Oh, yes, we do have Fardaws Aimaq. He'll be joining us shortly here on the podcast. And he withdrew his name from the NBA draft, but we'll see him back in Orem, which will be definitely excited. I'm excited to sit down and talk. Eric actually told me a fun fact right before is that he's now on a vegan diet, which is crazy to think about. So excited to sit down and chat with him.
Yeah, so he decided he did very well from all accounts in Chicago at the pre-draft camp. And several players, if you look on social media, had their names in the NBA draft and now withdrew and are going back to school. Some stayed,
which is
some will be in the draft,
though, for a lot of players to do that.
Right. And, for him to get that opportunity to talk to NBA teams so we can see what they told him, what he needs to work on the next year so that, he has a better chance of being drafted. Now the NBA, only 2 rounds. So it's pretty tough to get picked in the NBA draft.
Yeah, it definitely is. But excited to sit down and chat with him, see what he was told, what improvements we may see at Utah Valley men's basketball, but excited to have him on the podcast. Now, speaking of Utah Valley as well, they're looking for a new softball coach.
They are. Stacey Mae Johnson, after just 2 seasons at Utah Valley, has gone on to Fresno State as their head softball coach. And she did a really good job this past year. Of course, we only had 4 teams in the WAC softball tournament. They were as competitive as anybody, and it was a really good tournament this year with those 4 schools. But she had an opportunity to already move on. So I'm sure Jared Sumption, the athletic director at Utah Valley, has been hiring a lot of folks lately, and I guess it's a good sign when you're hiring people and other people want to hire them. Maybe you want them to stay around a little longer than 2 years, but Utah Valley, definitely a very attractive job for whoever gets that next.
Absolutely. And like we were just talking about, it's growing so fast in the state of Utah. So another incentive right there. We'll look forward to seeing who they get hired on for this upcoming year. And then let's also talk about the Olympics coming right down to the crack. We're 2 weeks away, a week away, I believe.
I'd have to look that up, Rach. Yeah. But we have another athlete to keep an eye on, an incoming freshman swimmer for New Mexico State, and we're guessing on the name here, so apologies on the pronunciation. Lina Karaya she's from Morocco, so she is going to be competing for her home country in the Tokyo Olympics. So that'll be pretty exciting. She's represented Morocco at the 2019 World Aquatic Championships. Before that was in South Korea. She was also at the 2019 African Games in Morocco. So pretty good athlete to keep an eye on. New Mexico State, of course, finished second in the WAC championships last year.
She's a 50 free and 100 freestylist, so she's a sprinter, but it's always fun to see. Once you see names that you're a little familiar with, it's excited to watch them on such a big stage. So we'll look forward. And I know that the Olympics actually just announced no fans
No fans,
No
really?
fans. Yeah, they
Wow.
had a spike in COVID-19 cases, so they made that decision. No fans for this year.
Well, we'll have to watch on TV. I wasn't going this year anyway.
I wasn't going to be in Tokyo either, so we will continue to watch straight from our couches. Last thing we want to talk about, though, football preview day. It's official. We're headed to Houston.
We are, and it's going to be on July 28th at the Woodlands Waterway Marriott. So we're very excited to be heading out there. And Rachel, I know you're going to have an opportunity to talk to each head coach, and each team is bringing two players, an offensive player and a defensive player. So a little get to know you with the new WAC football conference. Of course, the 4 new Texas schools will be playing football: Abilene Christian, Lamar, Sam Houston, and Stephen F. Austin. Sam Houston State coming back as the defending national champion in FCS football. And then, of course, Dixie State and Tarleton both have football as well. And there's going to be an alliance going on there. I believe that's still in place. So a lot to keep track of there with WAC football for the upcoming year. So we're real excited to be heading to the Woodlands here in a few weeks.
I know, just a few weeks, getting all prepped and everything for all these players and coaches. Excited to sit down and talk to them. Just like we are excited for our next segment, which we're going to be talking to Fardaws Aimaq from Utah Valley men's basketball. We'll be right back with the WAC podcast.
Hercules Tires is the official tire of the Western Athletic Conference, and for over 65 years has been providing tires with unbeatable quality at an unmatched value. Whatever the vehicle and whatever the terrain, Hercules Tires invites you to ride on our strength. For a retailer near you, visit HerculesTires.com.
Welcome back to the WAC podcast. Eric Danner, Rachel Veal coming at you. We've got a very special guest, Fardaws Aimaq from Utah Valley men's basketball. He announced he is returning, put his name into the NBA draft, has withdrawn it now, and he's going back to Orem. Fardaws, how are you today?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
We're doing well. How hard was the decision to withdraw your name?
To be honest with you, it was a really tough decision. I was 50-50. Initially, I was pretty set on coming back. Once I went through the couple workouts and, teams really started, becoming very interested. And then, I had a really good pro day in front of every single team that was out there. And then right after that pro day in Chicago, everything started to vamp up. And, I was talking to almost every team, and teams were, there was a couple teams that were trying to, keep me in it. But, the decision was tough, but I know that I made the right decision in terms of obviously individual, status and the team status. So I'm very excited to come back to Orem and hopefully make another run at it.
Fardaws, when did you decide that you were going to put your name in the NBA hat? And then how does that process work? How do they decide who goes to Chicago, who does the workouts? Are you contacted directly by the NBA teams or by the NBA itself for things like that?
Yeah. So now the NBA has put out a situation where you can hire an NCAA certified agent. So technically you're not losing eligibility when you sign with the certified agent. So the only thing is you can't accept any money, but they do everything else that a normal agent does. And they basically handle all, the team stuff, talk to the teams for you, contact the teams for you. And then obviously once you get there in person, you get to talk to them in person. But initially, I wasn't really thinking about it, but the season had ended. And then, there were 1 or 2 teams that, they just wanted to see me work out in person. And then I talked to my parents about it. I was like, it could be a good, fun little process. And then, once I put my name in, the interest just started kind of vamp up. And then Chicago, was a really fun, experience for myself because, it was first time ever being in front of, all these teams. Like you look to your left, you see Tom Thibodeau, you look to your right, you see Masai Ujiri and, Rick Carlisle on the top left. And it was just crazy because I'd never been in a situation like that. And to see all those, people that, you grow up either watching or, who you play a big part of, the game of basketball. I was obviously very thankful, but, the work is not, done yet.
Did you feel the pressure having all of those people watching you on what seems like such a big day?
Obviously there was a little bit of, anxiety, but at the end of the day, you're doing what you love. I mean, if you love the game of basketball, the pressure's not really there. I don't really see it as pressure. It was, for me, I was mentally prepared. I got my body ready in the last couple months. It was just kind of like a breeze. I just went out there and just played.
Now your road to the NBA workouts, maybe not the most typical road, Fardaws, that we've seen. You're from Canada. I guess your nickname is now the Big Maple. And
Apparently.
You went to Mercer initially, transferred to Utah Valley. And I don't want to say that you surprised everyone your first year, but as your first year as a sophomore, you're the WAC Player of the Year, the WAC Defensive Player of the Year. Did you have an idea that your season was going to turn out like that this past year?
Obviously I want to say I did, but to be honest with you, I was coming off my sit out year, and the biggest, thing that I kept telling myself is, I just need to do whatever I need to do to help our team win. And for me, obviously, Mark Madsen and the rest of the coaching staff put me in a great position to succeed, whether that was offensively or defensively. A lot of the credit goes to them. Like, I wouldn't, I'd be lying if I just, was up here saying, my whole sit out year was because of me and, this and that. Like, I really didn't know how to shoot a proper jump hook, until I got to Utah Valley. And Mark taught me that. He taught me a bunch of things, and I'm very grateful for, him and the staff. And that was, he was the biggest reason why I chose to come here. And obviously, it's paying off now. And I trusted him, and I'm going to continue to trust him.
Looking forward now as we move into this next season, what feedback did you get that you can apply to this next year?
Yeah, so a lot of the feedback was, bringing my turnovers down. That was one thing they really wanted to see. And then really just being more vocal. Like, one thing they want to see is a 5-man, is a big, to control the paint. There's times this year where, I was a little bit quiet on defense. I wouldn't talk much, but that's one thing they really want to see, because from a skill point, I've had a couple of GMs tell me, like, you're there, body wise, right there. And it's just, now it's like fine tuning up the little things, becoming a better leader, doing all the little stuff. Because, if you're trying to go play in the NBA, you're not going in as a, myself, I'm not going in as a LeBron James where I'm playing, 40 minutes a game. I got to know my role. I got to know what I'm going to come in and do. That's play hard, rebound the ball, play physical, and that's what I'm going to do.
Fardaws, we were talking in our earlier segment, the Major League Baseball draft is coming up this week in Denver. We happen to be in Denver, and there's 20 rounds in the MLB draft, only 2 rounds in the NBA draft, and that's going to be later this month. What is it that will make you stand out, do you think, next year to make teams want to take Fardaws Aimaq in the NBA draft?
Obviously, I think, the biggest thing for me is going to be, helping our team win. I think, making the NCAA tournament is a big key. They value guys that know how to win, have won, and know what it is to be in a winning culture. So that's definitely one thing that, we have to do this year. Obviously win games. We were right there last year. I think, our lack of experience, took over at the end. It's a really good New Mexico State team that, knocked us off. But, last year's last year, player of the year, defense player of the year, all that stuff, it's in the past now. It's, we got a revamped WAC with a lot of really good teams coming in. And, I'd be lying if I were to say, it's going to be a cakewalk. It's not going to be a cakewalk. Teams are going to be really good. Game planning and they want to win as bad as we want to win. So we have to do all the little things and try and come out on top.
Speaking of those new teams, how excited are you to have some fresh competition in the WAC?
I'm very excited. I watched a couple of those teams play in the tournament last year. I initially I didn't know, like, I remember I was watching them smack on Texas, I think. And it was Abilene Christian, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And I'm just, I was calling one of my teammates. I was like, these guys are amazing defensively. Like, Texas is a top, 10 team in the country right now. They can't get anything on offense. And he was like, yeah, they're joining our conference next year. And I didn't even know. And I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. Like, we're going to have a really good conference next year. And I don't know who they've returned, but obviously, that's a winning culture right there. They're going to be really good, along with, the couple other teams that have joined. It looks like we're going to be staying in Texas most of the time. So I'm not complaining about that.
We're talking with Fardaws Aimaq, the WAC Men's Basketball Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, and the winner of the Joe Kearney Award. Congratulations, Fardaws, on that. That goes to the top athlete, male athlete and female athlete in the entire conference. So not just basketball. I got to imagine that makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I had seen it come out, and I had texted our athletic director, and I was like, "There's another one. Like, I don't need any more." But obviously, I'm very thankful that I was recognized for that. But like I said, that stuff's in the past now. Like, it's a new season. Teams are getting ready now. It's summertime. Teams are grinding. Trying to prepare for next season. So. My focus is now, I'm back to school. I'm getting ready and trying to lead our squad to get some wins and hopefully make a run.
Lots of new here in the WAC, but I know for you as well, you have a new diet that you've started.
Yeah, plant-based.
That's impressive. I was going to say, I have no idea how you could possibly go vegan. It's impressive. I wish I could do it.
Yeah, I mean, initially, that was kind of one thing, a lot, like I was about 265 right when the season had ended. And I knew that this summer was going to be very vigorous in terms of working out and, training. And, I want to keep my ankles and knees fresh and everything. And obviously me being 6'11", 265 is a lot of weight to move around. So I did a lot of research and, I tried it out and it really worked for myself. I mean, I'm down to about 238, 239 right now. I'm just kind of, not a different player, but, moving much more different, like flying up and down the court, getting off the ground really well. So it was really tough at first. I love meat, I love chicken, I love steak. And, like the ice cream and stuff, obviously all the dairy stuff is really tough, but, it's worked out well for me. I'm probably going to end up going pescatarian during the season just because it's really tough to, prep everything yourself. Because you got to eat a lot. Because most of the plant-based stuff is low in calories, but it's definitely something I would recommend, everybody trying if they want to kind of switch it up.
And pescatarian, Fardaws, I'm an older guy, so I'm not, is that the chicken included, or what does pescatarian mean?
Just seafood.
Seafood.
Fish.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought it involved chicken, so I learned something new today as well. Can you walk us through? I'm interested to hear what your daily meal plan right now looks like.
So obviously this morning I woke up, I had some oatmeal with some almond milk, had a protein shake, a vegan protein shake. I came and worked out. Now I'm about to go get some food, probably some sort of like vegan pasta. A lot of my protein comes from either my protein shakes or from like a lot of like lentils, beans, spinach, broccoli, a lot of that type of stuff. And it's funny because initially you think of protein, you think, chicken, meat, this and that, but like the research obviously shows that like a lot of this stuff, they're just the middlemen, like you're not eating the thing where they're getting the protein from. So that's one thing, that I started realizing. My body has felt great since then. I'm trying to, stick to it, but during the season, I think it's going to be tough to go straight, plant-based, just because games are going to be tough and you need that protein. So I'm going to take that from the fish. It's obviously, it's good for you, but I've loved it so far. No complaints with that.
Now, Fardaws, I know losing that weight, I would imagine you're probably running faster, maybe jumping a little higher. But as far as when you're in Chicago, when you're 265, it's pretty hard to move you off the block. Was that different at all for you, having less weight when you're posting up or when you're playing defense? And does the honestly, vertical leap and the speed maybe make up for that?
Yeah. I think that stuff makes up for it. So I mean, obviously my matchup was the big kid from OSU, and I mean he's about the same size, same type of build, but like I just think it just you lose a little bit of strength on the block maybe, but honestly like your moves are so much quicker. Like you're facing up and you're able to get past guys, so you don't really have to bang as much. You're kind of using your speed and quickness, and then once you get to your spot, if you can elevate, you try and score right over them. And that's one thing, it's helped me out a ton. And I'm going to probably get back. I'm trying to get back up to about 250. I think 250 is perfect. About 250 and stay at 250. Stay at the body fat percentage that I'm at. That's another thing that, has gone down a ton. I'm about 7.5% body fat. So, it's been crazy, like going down from, when we had played New Mexico State in Las Vegas, I was 18.5%, gone down almost, 11%, which is, a big deal, for myself. So I'm very excited for what's to come.
Well, we're excited as well. Thank you so much for hopping on. I know you just got done with practice, so we appreciate the time. And we obviously can't wait to see you play this upcoming season. Thank
you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, that's Fardaws Aimaq, defending WAC Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Joe Kearney Award winner. When we come back, we're going to talk with Marlon Edge. A very interesting conversation about NIL. You're listening to the WAC Podcast.
We would like to thank our sponsors of the WAC Podcast, Hercules Tires and Adidas. Now, back to Eric and Rachel.
Welcome back to the WAC Podcast. Eric and Rachel Vigil with a very special guest, a very busy man, actually. It seems like all the time with COVID and everything happening. Marlon Edge, the Associate Commissioner of Compliance and Governance. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
Good. So I mentioned that it seems like in this COVID year, it has been crazy for you. While a lot of us slowed down our work, it seems like yours just increased crazily. How would you describe this past year for your career?
Can you guys hear me?
Actually, yeah, move that up a little bit closer there, Marlon.
I got you. All right, got you.
There you go.
All right, if I can sum it up in one word, that's chaos. Absolute chaos. Just the most hectic time in my career in the business. Just if I can kind of frame it up a little bit, it's, on a normal day, both nationally and within the conference, there's always this big list of topics that, we're always considering getting a feel for. And so I can bring it back to our membership and put it in front of them, have them consider it, and really come up with a conference position on a lot of these things, right? So with COVID, all that came to a stop. The focus completely shifted to COVID-19 and how the NCAA conference offices and member institutions, how and even if they could continue to conduct business. And so that was the focus over the last probably about 16 months now. So it's just been a whole bunch of chaos there. I couldn't imagine from March of 2020, sitting in that meeting room with ADs and presidents from our schools, and watching the decision being made to actually cancel the men's and women's basketball tournament and then subsequently canceling spring sports. Watching those decisions being made from that point through the whole 2020-21 academic year, and how everything came together, I would say it came together as well as it could have. And that's a credit to everybody here in the conference office, and also for our member institutions to have that come together as well as it could have, considering all the factors that were put in front of us. So.
And Marlon, what we're going to touch on we're going to talk quite a bit about NIL here in a second. Just wanted to follow up with what you're just saying about how did that impact student athletes, that COVID year? We hear COVID year. It seems, they get that extra year of eligibility, if you will, and some maybe even more than that. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, initially the NCAA granted the spring 2020 sports student athletes in additional year, a season of competition, or an extension of the eligibility if they happen to be senior student athletes at that point. So, moving forward to this past academic year, 2020-21, the NCAA granted that autonomy for institutions to be able to give those extra seasons of competitions and extensions of eligibility to fall and winter sports student athletes. Going back to spring, they kind of left it up to institutional discretion in that regard. So if the institutions, based on however they make those decisions, some student athletes got an additional year of eligibility and added onto their clocks. So benefited the student athletes in a big way, because student athletes, this is why we're here, right? This is why we're in the business. The student athletes, were the ones who suffered the most, and to give them back something to kind of end their career or extend it, was something that the NCAA did put in place, and many of our institutions did grant that opportunity to their student athletes.
You may not know the answer to this, but what percentage of the WAC student athletes or even the NCAA student athletes decided to take that extra year? Do you know?
I do not know, but any exact numbers, but I do know that there was a good number within the conference as well as nationally. Obviously, it depends on the space they have available. If they have, some of the financial aid numbers, if they worked out, it's all dependent, and that's depending on the level of financial, what's the word I'm looking for? The availability of finances for some of our institutions. So, some of them have a lot, some of them not so much, but kind of just depends on that. But I do know a good number of student athletes within the conference did utilize that. So.
And Marlon, perhaps, I don't know if unintended consequences is the right term for this, but with so many seniors taking that extra year or getting that year back, which obviously is fair to them because they missed out on that opportunity to play for championship and maybe play their senior year. Are we seeing a bit of a log jam maybe with normally you're going to have X number of seniors graduate, move on, and X number of freshmen come in or transfers come in. Now all of a sudden, maybe there aren't as many positions to transfer or come into?
Yes. And that's one of the unintended consequences, as you said, one of the cons of, the NCAA implementing that availability. As you see, one of the big stories is the NCAA's transfer portal and how many basketball student athletes were in there, baseball student athletes as well. So yes, that was definitely an unintended consequence there. So there's, it's not, we had the COVID year. Hopefully we're done with that. But what are the effects? 3 to 5 years down the line? Maybe that's something that hasn't been flushed out as much as some people should have, but you got to think about that as well. Down the line, what are some of these consequences of making these decisions?
So much that goes on behind the scenes that you don't know if you're just like the avid sports fan. But now let's talk about the name, image, likeness. Wow, in a nutshell, all of this, right? Can you expand a little bit about what this means for student athletes moving forward?
Quite simply, as of July 1st, NCAA student athletes, all NCAA student athletes are able to benefit financially from the use of their names, images, and likenesses. Student athletes are now able to benefit monetarily from anything from paid advertisements, promoting their own business ventures, companies, and also public appearances. Those are some of the various ways that student athletes can benefit from name, image, and likeness as of July 1st. Now, one thing I think that needs to be clarified is that the NCAA has not passed any name, image, and likeness legislation as of yet. What we're seeing is sort of a mixture between state laws that are now in effect and many more state laws that will be in effect in the future, as well as some interim guidelines that the NCAA has put in place as a way to kind of help pull these state laws that are into effect and make it as easy of a process as possible. So right now, the NCAA's interim guidelines are going to be in effect until the NCAA legislation that's currently tabled is adopted or federal legislation is passed. So again, what the NCAA's interim guidelines does for those student athletes that are in states that don't have an effective law, it permits them to be able to take advantage of the name, image, and likeness, just as any student athlete who was in a state with a state law would be able to.
We're talking with Marlon Edge, Associate Commissioner of Compliance and Governance for the Western Athletic Conference. And Marlon, they came out of the gate hot with this NLI, or see, I knew I'd say that, NLI, National Letter of Intent.
I do it
NIL.
I do it all the time. I do it all the time.
Where it was past June 30, and then July 1, 12:01 or stroke of midnight, we started seeing student athletes endorsing products right off the bat, which I was a little surprised by. I didn't know that like it would be ready to go July 1, but in terms of products, in terms of what student athletes are allowed to endorse, I mean, obviously there's usually guidelines or something in terms of what's allowed, what's not allowed. Is there anything in place right now?
Yeah, and that's dependent on state laws that are in effect for those student athletes. For the student athletes, again, that are in states that do not have an effective law, it is the responsibility of their institution to make policies and guidelines that these student athletes will follow in the interim until, again, a federal law is passed or NCAA rules are passed, right? So that's dependent on state laws and what's under effect in those certain states. Generally, there are going to be products that don't align with the mission and values of certain institutions, and then also that are in conflict with sponsorship deals at an institution or other sort of deals that they may have in place. So in that regard, certain products that are going to be under that umbrella are going to be impermissible for student athletes to promote and or endorse. As part of the NCAA's rules that are currently tabled. Now they do have some guidelines in that regard that would make that those products that would be impermissible to endorse, and those fall in line with NCAA rules in regards to what's impermissible there. No promotion of sports wagering companies or companies that promote or endorse or sell products that are on the banned substance list. So that's the direction that the NCAA is going with their legislation. Again, as of right now, it's just, what's under the state laws. It's just a big gray area over pretty much everything. But that's kind of how that's determined.
Now, how is it working when it comes to school logos, school brands, wearing those types of T-shirts, jerseys, etc.? How does that work for student athletes in the schools?
Right. And again, with no effective federal legislation or NCAA rules, again, it's dependent on the state laws and what those or those policies that are implemented by those institutions that are in states with no effective state laws. So again, with this proposed NCAA legislation, that is addressed, and it essentially says that NCAA legislation would not permit the use of institutional marks for non-institutional name, image, and likeness activities and or promotions. So now when we go to the referencing of the institutions, again, NCAA law does say that be permissible to do. You can reference the institution during your name, image, and likeness activities.
Interesting, yeah, because watching the NBA Finals last night, you see Chris Paul doing his State Farm commercials. Obviously, he's not wearing a Phoenix Suns jersey or any reference made to the NBA or the Phoenix Suns, but
you know who he is.
We know who he is, and this will be interesting to see how everything is kind of navigated through in the near future. Talking with Marlon Edge, and Marlon, one of the other things are like Rachel alluded to at the beginning, you've had a lot going on this year, but you're also run our Student Athlete Advisory Committee, the SAC, which they meet every year, a couple times a year, and they discuss. I imagine this is probably a big issue with the SAC.
Obviously,
big topic.
obviously, yes.
What exactly is going on with SAC this summer?
Hey, we're getting ready for the summer meeting. Again, it'll be done virtually, hopefully for the last time. But that meeting is set for July 29th through 30th. Again, that'll be done virtually. It's an exciting time for the SAC. We got a bunch of new members with 4 new institutions now in our conference. We have an additional 8 members. So that brings it up to about 26 student athletes.
Wow.
And actually student athletes from those 4 institutions, have been involved a little bit. At the turn of the year, we invited them to the Zoom meetings, the monthly Zoom meetings that the SAC had. So, and they've integrated very well. So it's going to be exciting to have our new institutions be a part of this new era in the conference and new era for our student athletes. And additionally, with Southern Utah as well joining next summer, they'll be involved in that process as well. So, some of the hot topics that our student athletes will be talking about at the meeting later this month. Obviously, again, name, image, and likeness. Obviously, with them being the affected party here, we want to see what their thoughts are, how we can potentially, as a conference, come up with some sort of guidance or perspective. So that's probably going to be one of the main topics there. Other topics are going to include, the WAC SAC budget and how it can be better utilized to provide, student athletes with certain, I guess you could say certain. Certain advantages, I guess you could say. Maybe that's the wrong word I'm looking for, but how can we better, put forward support. Thank you. Thank you.
I got you.
Better support, more opportunities for our student athletes, whether it be in the professional development space, mental health space, name, image, and likeness space. Now, whatever, however we can adjust the budget to provide them with those opportunities. That'll be a big discussion as well. As always, one of our big things each year is mental health. And this year it taken in a little bit of a different direction, and focus on mental health as student athletes are returning to, potentially some are returning to campus, or just returning to some sort of normalcy on their campuses. So a return from COVID-19 type of focus on mental health, and providing some opportunities in that realm. Some other topics we're looking at, obviously equity, diversity, and inclusion, and also continuing to find ways to better integrate our student athletes at the conference governance level as well as the institutional level. This past year, with the weekly video conferences that we had with our conference governance groups, our student athletes had more of an opportunity to be in front of our athletic administrators groups, our WAC council, and our various other governance groups, and that bridge was crossed, and it was pretty successful in my eyes. Getting them in front of these administrators more often, except for once a year usually at a WAC council meeting. So, but continuing to find ways to better integrate them into the conference governance structure, and hopefully within the institutional athletic departments. So those are some of the topics that we'll be talking about amongst the other various topics.
And Kat Harston, who we've had in the studio here before from New Mexico State, recently got an appointment, and she was one of the people on those calls as you're talking about. And I don't think that's the case with every conference in the country, if I'm not mistaken, that a SAC rep gets to sit in on these calls with the ADs and actually gets to vote as well, has a voting share, just like the schools do. What a great opportunity for Kat.
Exactly. And she's utilized that opportunity, her as well as the former WAC SAC Vice President, Rachel Yu, from UTRGV. Obviously, yes. Yes, obviously, Megan Clavitter, the former WAC SAC representative to the national SAC. So now Kat is going to step up into that role and be the conference's representative on the NCAA Division I SAC. So that means that another topic that we're going to have is voting in a new president and vice president to the group. So, but very proud of Kat. She's done an excellent job. She has a very commanding presence when she does speak. She doesn't speak often, but when she does speak, she has a very commanding presence. And we're all proud of her and look forward to what she's going to do nationally for the conference.
So excited to see what she'll do. And I have one more question for the name, image, likeness portion of this. How or do you think that we will see a lot more social media presence from student athletes now that they can kind of benefit off of this, with a lot of it coming, I'm picturing YouTube showing a lot more behind the scenes at schools and stuff like that. Do you anticipate more?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I think that's something that we all can do. Well, they all can do. I mean, that's not my realm anymore, but that's something that they all can do. It's funny how, I think that the common misconception is that name, image, and likeness is going to benefit the star football, men's basketball student athletes. And, the research shows that, that's not necessarily the case. While they may be, one of those who will benefit the most, it's the student athletes that have that social media presence are the ones that, have shown that they would benefit the most from name, image, and likeness. So, I think everybody has a phone, everybody has some sort of a talent that they can put on social media. So it's going to provide everybody that opportunity, I think, social media wise.
One last question for you. How will schools have to kind of put the hammer down of being like, not everything can be recorded. You can't show, all aspects of this life, because some of these things do need to be kept private. Right.
I mean, that goes back to potentially state law, NCAA laws, or more importantly, institutional policies and procedures. So that's one of the topics that's going to have to be addressed. It should be at the top of the list. I think institutions already kind of, or they should be talking to their student athletes about, being a little less candid, I guess. With their phones and recording stuff. Yes, exactly. So I think that particular area will be further addressed, and you might be seeing some more policies and procedures put in place by our institutions.
Marlon, certainly very interesting stuff here. I want to thank you again for taking some time out, and want to thank our guests today. We had Fardaws, Aimaq, and Marlon Edge, and want to thank you for listening to the WAC Podcast.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And check out our website at wacsports.com.